I want to talk briefly about my two favorite LPVOs, what I like about them, what I don't like about them, and advice I have for you as you're looking for your own LPVOs. As we're tracking along through this, you can use the chapter marks in the description or just swipe across the bottom and you'll be able to find that. You can skip ahead to whatever you're looking for. As a quick disclaimer, yes, there are better options on the market, and yes, there are cheaper options on the market. These are simply my two favorites, and I'm giving this information so you can make an educated decision as you look to purchase your own LPVOs or other optics that you may be looking at. So the two optics that we're talking about today are the ATACR 1-8 and the Vortex Razor Gen 3 1-10. Now, the first thing I love about both of these is their accessibility and warranty. And the reason I put those two things together is because if you're looking for an optic or you're looking for accessories for your optic, and you can't find them in stock anywhere, or they're really hard to get, and there's only one store that has them, and you can't get the parts you need, and you're having to constantly wait, it becomes increasingly frustrating. These are both accessible just about anywhere you look from all of the major online retailers, along with the links down in the description. And it gives you peace of mind because if there's something you need for them, you can get it pretty quick. Additionally, with the warranty, if you're worried about them being durable, you're worried about something going wrong with them and having to get it fixed, they both have great warranties, so it's really easy to get those things fixed, to get them replaced, whatever it may be. And depending on where you purchase from, like somewhere like Tag Firearms or Big Tex, they typically handle the warranty for you. They may replace it themselves, and then they'll deal with Vortex or Nightforce so that you don't have to go through that. But if you do, because you bought it somewhere else, they are both good brands to deal with. I haven't heard anybody have really any issues with getting things fixed or replaced from either one of them. So I think that goes a long way to give you peace of mind because these are both pretty pricey optics to get into. And if you're investing in something like that, you want to know it's going to be taken care of long term. From there, the next thing that I love about both these is the reticle. For me, reticles are probably the most important part of optics before glass clarity. And the reason I say that is because depending on how you're shooting, depending on what you want to shoot, if you're trying to shoot out at distance, if you're trying to shoot for competition or hunting, having a reticle that suits your style of shooting or what you're trying to accomplish is going to make your life a whole lot easier. Now, if you're somebody who just plinks at 100 yards or you shoot at maybe 50 yards and you're using this more like a red dot, reticles probably don't matter as much to you, in which case you don't really need to spend the money on getting an optic like either one of these. However, if you are somebody who wants to push your gun out to, say, 700, 1,000 yards, 1,200 yards, having reticles like the two in these will go a long way, and it will also aid you if you're still trying to shoot at 1 power, up close at 15 yards, 20 yards, 25 yards, that type of thing. So I think they're both very versatile reticles. They're both very usable. There are some things I don't like, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but I think they have probably two of the best reticles on the market in LPVOs. From there, the next thing I would say is definitely glass clarity. They both have great glass clarity. Now, don't confuse glass clarity with lack of distortion. You can have really clear glass but still be distorted. And so we see this a lot in cameras, and one of the things that we do is we calibrate our lenses and we have these charts and things like that. But when we put them on there, we can see how much barrel distortion we get where the edges of the image start to bow and curve. So if you've ever seen a movie that has a really wide angle lens and you look in the corners, you'll notice that the corners kind of start to curve a little bit. We're asking a lot of LPVOs because of the magnification range. And because of that, we do start to get some barrel distortion at 1 power. It looks a little funny or funky, but it's a trade-off we get because if you want that extra magnification like the 1-10, you're gonna trade off and get some of that. Otherwise, you'd have this insanely long scope. And there's guys who go way in depth on like the science behind this, and you can check that out. I know there's people who are gonna ask about the new Vortex that's kind of been leaked out that's smaller. I don't know how they're getting a better image out of a smaller scope. There's some weird voodoo they're doing in there. Now, I haven't looked through one of those, so I can't say what the image looks like, but typically as you start to compress the length of the scope down, you start to lose some of that true 1 power and some of the edge-to-edge clarity and some other things. But anyways, I think glass clarity out of both of these is great, particularly at the higher magnification, which for me is where it matters most. Things up close, having super clear glass, not really a big deal because we can tell it's a person at 5 yards. When it's at 600 yards, 700 yards, having that glass clarity is super, super important, especially when you're trying to make very precise shots. Another feature that I love about both of these have is capped turrets. So it gives you the option to put caps on these. So if you're somebody who wants to hold and you don't have to worry about these getting bumped and your zero being shifted, whatever, you can throw these caps on there and not have to worry about it. Now, the Nightforce does come with, they call them just the beauty rings, and all it does is it goes over and protects your threads. I think Vortex has some you can buy that will go over there to protect them as well. So if you're somebody who prefers to dial, you can do that as well and have uncapped turrets. But it's nice having the option for both. The next thing would be daylight bright of the red dot. So The great thing about LPVOs is that we can use them like red dots. They are not a true replacement of a true red dot because we have parallax, we have a smaller field of view, but with technology, you do get a daylight bright optic. Now, I would say the 1 to 10 is probably not quite as bright as the 1 to 6 was, but it is still daylight bright and very usable compared to other options on the market. The Nightforce ATACR 1 to 8 is also daylight bright. I had no issues using either one of them at 1 power and having them illuminated. Now, I don't really use them illuminated when we're at magnification. This is more so using it at, say, like inside 100 yards, we're shooting IPSCs or, you know, like a 2-gun or 3-gun stage. That's where I've found it very useful. The other thing they both have is, this goes back to the reticle, they have the lines that kind of point your eye to the center. So it brings you into that dot and helps your eye to really be drawn to the center of the reticle very quickly, and found it very usable with a very usable Eyebox on both of them at 1 power. I know I'll get a lot of questions about these, but these are the 100 Concepts scope caps. They're very quick to throw off and on. They don't get in the way when you use the magnification ring, and they stay out of the way. The issue that I had with the factory ones is they would just kind of rattle off. If you're mainly shooting PRS style and you're not doing a lot of standing shooting, I don't think you get as much vibration through the optics, so they don't rattle off quite as bad. So it's not something that you absolutely have to get, but if you want a very simple, quick, easy off and on caps, the 100 Concepts is a great option. I really enjoyed these, and you don't have to worry about losing them, because that was the issue that I had. Is the other options that I had, the cheaper ones, I'd always take them off, set them down somewhere, and then forget where I put them and then lose them. So what do I not like about both of these? Well, the price. Now, I have a little bit of a question mark by that, or an asterisk by that, because price is relative. You're gonna get what you pay for. If you want a quality optic, you're gonna have to pay for it. And that's the case here. So we can complain that they're expensive, but at the end of the day, you're getting a good optic. You're getting an optic worthy of what you're paying for. It's worth the amount you're paying for it. I don't feel they're overpriced for what they are, but they are expensive. So it is what it is. Now, while both of these do have great 1 powers and they are both very usable, they're not true 1 powers. Now, this goes back to people trying to make optics into red dots, and these particular LPVOs just are not red dots. And so the 1 power, while it says is a 1 power, none of them are true 1 powers. There are some that get very, very close, but they're just not. Because of the amount of glass that it has to go through, it doesn't come out perfect for everybody. The next thing I would say is that one of the downsides we get with these LPVOs is there is no parallax adjustment, and it is a trade-off. It's something that we have to trade off for getting all the other features that we want. There is no parallax adjustment. It is what it is. It would be nice, but you know, you're asking a lot out of an optic that is not designed to do everything. So if you are somebody who needs parallax adjustment for those really long, precise shots, something like a 2 to 10, something like a 4 to 16, some of the other options out there would be better suited for that type of shooting versus these. I know for some of you that may be a deal breaker, not having parallax adjustment. The last two issues that I have are specific to the Razor 1 to 10. Now again, as I've been saying this entire time, we are asking a lot of this optic. To go from 1 power to 10 power is asking a lot. And the two issues that I found with this that I'm not crazy about are that the reticle, the center dot on the reticle, is a little bit bigger than I would like for it to be. The more refined that center dot is, the better if you're trying to make precise shots. Now, there are some people who prefer a larger dot because it's a little bit faster if you're shooting on a bigger target. Your eye picks it up quicker. Similar to the EOTech Donut of Death. Our eyes pick up the big dot faster. We can kind of place the big dot over a target and then refine it with the center dot in the middle. However, if you're trying to make very precise shots, it's not so great because it may cover the target, especially on like when I'm shooting an MOA square and I put that circle, it covers the MOA square. So it makes it harder for me to make a precise shot, where the Nightforce has a very refined center dot and I can actually place that dot inside of the MOA square. And if I want to, I can even put it in one corner of the square or of the diamond so that I know I'm being even more precise than what I could out of the Vortex. And while we're talking reticles, I do want to talk about the ATACR reticle really quick. This is the newer ATACR reticle, which is the DMX F1 version. So the big key difference is that the center dot is more refined, and then you have 2 dots above it. So if you need to hold under, you can do that as well, depending on context of what you're trying to do, whether it's competition or whatever. But it does give you that option. The newer reticle is better. If you have the older one, or if you're looking at purchasing one, make sure that it is the newer reticle. If you have the older one, you will know that center dot is a little bit bigger. If you're looking at purchasing a new one, make sure you get the F1 reticle, the DMX F1, and you will again notice because of that really refined center dot. So they listened to the feedback of end users and they said, everybody said, hey, we need a smaller center dot, and they did that, came out great. I think that really made the ATACR so much better than what it was. The other thing that I'm not so crazy about on this is that the Eyebox at the 10 power is not super usable. If you're in a very stable position, like shooting from prone, if you're really good about getting into the same position every time, not such a big deal. But one of the hacks you can do if you already have a 1 to 10 is just dial it back to 8. Opens up that Eyebox a little bit more, gives you more usability out of it. But then you're using a 1 to 8 and not a 1 to 10. So it's like, why wouldn't you just go with the ATACR 1 to 8? So again, trade-offs, it depends on what's most important for you. So not to say that there's anything wrong with it, it's just not my preference. Now, as I said at the beginning of this, there are obviously plenty of other options out on the market, and there's a few honorable mentions that I would put out there that I say are good options for the price. So if these two are maybe out of your budget, or maybe there's something about these that you're not crazy about, some other options I would say are the Sig Tango. Now, the issue that I have with that one is that it's not daylight bright. The reticle is a very good and usable reticle, but similar to the Vortex, some of the dots are a little bit bigger than I would prefer. And it's a 6 power, right? So now we have the technology to get really good 1 to 8 powers, and some people are pushing the 1 to 10. So I feel like buying a 1 to 6 is putting you at a bit of a disadvantage in buying old technology when we're already moving forward past that. But if you have one, if you're looking to get one, it is still a very good option on the market. The next one I would say is the EOTech 1 to 10. Now I have very, very little time behind the EOTech 1 to 10. It does look clear. It's very similar to the Razor 1 to 10. I would say the Eyebox is about the same as the 1 to 10. And again, another good reticle, maybe just not as daylight bright as some of you would like. So trade-offs there, but it may come in a little bit cheaper than these two options. So maybe an option worth looking at. Next, I would say the Leupold Mark 8 with the CQB SS reticle, whatever it is called. Great option, great glass, good reticle. Personally, I don't like it because it has the circle in the center versus the really fine dot, and that goes back to what I said earlier about the Vortex versus the ATACR. So, but that may be something that you like, something that you prefer. Another great option for a LPVO. And again, another trade-off with that is going to be that it's, again, not a true 1 power, but they're honest about it. It's like a 1.5 or whatever, 1.5 to 8. Few great options out there as others you may want to look at. I'm sure there's a whole slew of others. You know, you've got the Strike Eagles, you've got AccuFire, you've got whatever other brand you want to throw out there. You determine for yourself of what you want to get. Now, I know there's going to be somebody who brings up ACOGs and BDCs because both of those are becoming increasingly popular again. Now, what I want to say about the ACOG is that if you've got one, cool. Learn to use it. Learn to use the BDC. Understand your equipment and push it to its limits and just make the most of it. That's what I would say. I'm not telling you got to get rid of anything. I'm not telling you you have to buy one of these. If that's what you want, that's what you got and you like it, use it. But I will say that the ACOG isn't as plug and play or as usable as some would say. And the reason I say that is that, and this goes into BDCs, is that you do have to do some work on the back end, right? Because even though you're going to have your 200, 300, 400, 500, 600 hash marks, those aren't exact, right? It could be 425 and 635 and 740. And so what does that actually look like in usability? But you're gonna have to find that out. You're gonna have to find out what that actually is based on your gun, your barrel length, your bullet you're using, the environmental. So it's always gonna be changing. You're always gonna have, and if you're gonna do the work to be precise with it, you might as well get an optic that has a reticle that makes it easier for you to do those things. And that's why I say avoid the BDC, avoid the ACOG. Additionally, most of the people that I hear say, oh, well, I can get an ACOG and shoot out to 400 or 500 yards and just be on target, you know, but they're shooting CD size steel, right? So like human size silhouettes. You can make those same hits with a red dot magnifier. You don't have to have a BDC to make those hits, because a lot of times BDCs get you close to like the vicinity. And from what I've seen personally with most average shooters who get on a BDC, they're not on target right away. They are maybe get one on target, maybe one 3 feet wide, maybe one 2 feet low, maybe one over the shoulder. And so they're kind of bouncing around the target. They're close, but they're not dead on every time. It's not as precise. You can make those same type of hits where you're walking your way into the target using a red dot magnifier. And that's a whole nother debate for another day, because then you may start thinking about, well, what about the price, the durability, and the cost of the other options versus LPVOs? And that's a whole nother debate. But I will tell you this, I've never seen an LPVO go down out in the wild. Not saying it doesn't, I just haven't seen it personally. I've seen more EOTechs and aim points go down than I've seen LPVOs. And more people are starting to run them, so we're getting more and more data about how durable they really are. If you are getting a cheaper LPVO, just know it's more likely to break than it is one of the more expensive ones because they're having to cut that cost somewhere, and part of that cost cutting is going to be in your durability. The last thing I would say about ACOGs and LPVOs with BDCs is that context matters. It really depends on what you're trying to achieve, what your goal is, and how precise you're trying to be. If you're shooting very large targets, having a BDC will work for you. It doesn't matter that it's not as precise. It will get you close, and that works. Again, if you're somebody who's not using match grade ammo, then being super precise doesn't really matter because you're limited by what your ammo is capable of doing. So it all depends. There's no set answer on what you need to run on with your barrel length or this or that. It really depends on your goal and what you're trying to achieve. The last thing that I would say is that people always say, what about budget options? And what I will tell you is that as you're looking for an LPVO, whether it's one of these two or some budget option, is that it's relative. Unfortunately, that it is what it is. Because somebody's budget option may be $200 to $300. Somebody else's budget option may be $500 to $700, and another's may be $1,500, and someone else's may be $3,000. So we say budget, but everybody's budget is different. So it's more about what your goal is, what your intended purpose is, and finding the best option, the best tool available to you for that. If having a cheaper optic in cost is more important to you, that's fine. Find the best tool you can get for the price and use that to achieve your goal. If having an optic that gives you the best option to shoot out to, 800-900 yards with your 16-inch and you want to compete and your budget is a little bit higher than other people's, cool. Find the best tool that's going to allow you to do that. So I would tell you, based on what I talked about earlier, look for one that has good availability and warranty for the same reasons we talked about earlier. Look for one that has a reticle that does what you need it to do. So if you're somebody who just absolutely wants to dial all the time, you don't need a reticle, a very cluttered reticle. Something like the 1:6, the Razor 1:6 has a good reticle for that. You're always dialing anyway, so it doesn't matter. Glass clarity. After you have a good reticle or the reticle that suits you, then start looking at glass clarity. And the reason I have that after the reticle is because you're gonna pay more for better glass clarity. The better glass you have, the more expensive your optic's gonna become. You can get a LPVO with a good reticle that maybe doesn't have such great glass for cheaper than you have an LPVO that has a good reticle with really good glass. And then last, I would say, is daylight bright. And the reason that I have that last is because the more I've shot LPVOs, the less I've found that to be important. Because now it's so many offset mounts, whether that's on top, whether it's off at a 45, whatever, you can run a red dot, a small micro red dot on there and use that as your main one power optic if that's really what you want to do. I mean, even a lot of guys who run ACOGs are doing that. They're putting their RMR on top and you just run it with your ACOG. So there's so many more options out there now that you don't really have to have the true daylight bright if that's not something you need. Plus, it gives you a little bit more versatility in how you can use both of them together because you can have one zeroed at one distance and one zeroed at another distance. So there's lots of options there. So I don't feel it's as important as it was maybe 3 years ago. So I don't think daylight bright is necessarily a make or break deal like it was then. But based on that, set your goal, go through those, figure out what is gonna give you the best option or the best ability to achieve what you wanna achieve, and get that optic. I am in no way saying you have to buy any of this stuff, but I hope that it answers some of the questions that some of you might have had about these two optics, along with some of the other options on the market. If you feel like there's something I left out, there's something else you want to know about either one of them, leave it in the comments down below. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe. Karate chop that bell so you get notified every time I upload a video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Oh, I can't say that. I can't talk about that because then it's gonna get flagged. Crap. Okay. Well, let's try this again. From the top, make it drop. Cool. Low power warning. Why we have low power? Okay, we'll pause there and swap out the battery. Man, that took 8 years to film.